Well, welcome, Sarah. Thank you very much for doing this. I know you've been on our women's group before, and I've been kind of being on social media for a while. And uh, well, I mean, I like you go by the carnivore yogi, which is obviously an anomaly in the yoga.
It definitely makes a few people a little bit uncomfortable, I would say, to say that I'm a yoga teacher. I do yoga, and I eat a lot of meat.
Oh my gosh, goodness! Hey, can you tell us, for those folks that aren't familiar, where are you at? Because I can't remember where you're located. Are you? And just kind of tell us a bit of your background and maybe a little bit of your story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I am here in Atlanta, Georgia. That's why my face is a little bit red. I tried to take your 500 push-up challenge today, Sean, and trying to cool down a little bit. It is hot and humid here in Atlanta. So I'm born and raised here, no accent to prove it. And, I've actually been teaching yoga for over a decade now. And I was a vegan for a couple of years. I thought that once you became a yoga teacher and you were really immersed in yoga, that it was some sort of a requirement to be a vegan. It was like you're respecting nature and this, that, and the other. And so I did, and I followed veganism for a couple of years. I was very strict, and then my health began to fail me. I started having cavities. I was trying to do the more athletic types of yoga, and I would have these injuries that just would not go away. I mean, they were just horrible. And I just felt like, okay, but I have to do this because I'm a yoga teacher. I have to do it. And it was actually one of my yoga teachers that came to me and said, I see what you're trying to do here, but you're sick. You don't look good. Your hair's falling out. You're always injured. How are you going to be able to teach everyone if you're injured all the time? What kind of teacher is that? How are you going to be able to be of service to anyone, of your family, your friends, your students? If you're sick all the time and you're injured all the time, you need to eat some animal protein. So begrudgingly, this was 2014, I started eating meat again and felt better right away. But I continued to kind of struggle with some health issues and was just trying to find the right way of eating that was going to work for me. I did paleo. I tried the autoimmune protocol. That was kind of my last step, last thing to do, because I had debilitating depression, anxiety. I had PCOS. Kind of my last straw was getting an ultrasound with my doctor about a month before I started carnivore diet, and having ovary, cysts all over my ovaries, and eczema that would really just come and go. When I was a kid, it would crack and bleed all up and down my arms. And, the worst thing really, that was the depression, anxiety. I had been on SSRIs since I was 14, on and off benzos, trazodone, sleeping medications. So thankfully, I had gone off all of those about 6 months before I started the carnivore diet. I'd started meditating twice daily. That's a big part of what I do, is twice daily meditation. Haven't missed a session in over 2 years. It's very important to me. But, I had been off of those medications before and never able to stay off them for any consistent amount of time. So, finally, one of my friends, actually a friend of mine who's a functional medicine doctor, she had been on the carnivore diet for about 5 months. And I just went to her. I was like, I feel like crap. I'm having to quit practicing yoga again because my joints are hurting. I was trying to do Ashtanga yoga, which is a lot of, push-ups and jumping through your hands and handstands. And it's kind of like gymnastics yoga, I call it. And it's very vigorous. And I had to quit because my joints were hurting so bad. I mean, I'd get in that push-up position and my shoulder would just radiate pain. So she said, I've been doing this carnivore diet thing for 5 months and I feel great. And so I said, well, if she's a, doctor and she's doing it, then let me just give it a try for 30 days. So y'all know the story about let's try carnivore for 30 days and how amazing you feel at the end of that 30 days. And you just want to keep going. So here I am, 20 months later, still doing the deal. I've made some definite tweaks and changes along the way, especially in the last 6 months. But, I got an ultrasound 4 months in to carnivore of my ovaries again, and the cysts were gone within 4 months, totally gone. And I have not been on, it's been 2 years now that I have not been on a single medication for sleep, for depression, or for anxiety. And, you know, if you've ever been on those medications, I know Brett's in here, we've done an interview on my channel, like, it sucks to be on a bunch of pills to manage your mental state. So that, you know, those are just a few, and my joint pain's gone. You know, I can exercise how I want to exercise, do those yoga push-ups, or try to do the Sean Baker push-ups, which are way harder, without that debilitating pain that I was getting. So yeah, that's the long short of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm only 100 push-ups in for the day. I still got 400 more to do. So I just do sets of 50 throughout the day, kind of a fun thing to do in addition to some other stuff. So, so have you noticed, I don't know if you're familiar, there's a gal, and I try to get her to come on and talk, but she's a little shy, but there's a gal who goes by the Carnivore Granny. Her name's like Donna Leach, and she does, and I don't know much about yoga. I did like 2 or 3 classes, and, you know, I just, it wasn't really my thing, but she does some pretty, she's 72 and she's doing some interesting stuff. It says that, you know, things she hadn't been able to do in decades. And in fact, she's doing them better at 72 than she could back then. Have you noticed any benefits with regard to your yoga performance since you've changed your diet from, say, contrast that to what you could do, you know, maybe on a plant-based diet versus, and I can't say vegan because, you know, you were never truly a vegan if you quit.
No, I wasn't.
So you couldn't have been a vegan. So you have to just say plant-based. So, so using a plant-based diet versus, you know, maybe a more carnivorous diet now.
I mean, I'm definitely stronger. I have more stamina. I am a little more flexible. It's interesting I'm 41 now. I just turned 41 in June. And I love doing back bends. That's probably my favorite thing. And it took me years to be able to do these back bends. But, you know, just after about a month on Carnivore, I was able to get deeper into my back bends than I've ever been able to before. It's just, I think it's all of the fat and that meat, what it does to your, to support your joints. I mean, I think you're getting that, the collagen, cartilage, all that healthy stuff. Is like, it's almost like it gives this protective layer to your spine. So stuff that would just hurt to try to do, it started to become a lot easier pretty quickly when I switched over to Carnivore.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because, you know, we see a lot of emphasis in recent years on mobility, on you know, dynamic warm-ups, on foam rolling, you know, because everybody is stiff and everybody's got these you know, spots of, you know, tension and soreness. And so there's a whole industry that's sprung up around this stuff. And, you know, I go into the gyms, well, not recently, but when I was going to the gyms, I would see people that would spend, you know, half an hour or 45 minutes stretching and moving and mobility and warming up before they even started their workout. And, you know, me, I'm in my 50s. I just go in there and start working out because I don't have flexibility problems and mobility issues. And I think diet does play a role in that. I mean, I honestly do, which is interesting to hear. And it's not that mobility work isn't necessarily important for many people, but I think the diet definitely makes that perhaps less necessary in a lot of cases. So let me ask you, so as a carnivore yoga instructor, I mean, are you still, I mean, I guess I don't know now because it's everything's kind of shut down, but are you actively still teaching currently, or you know, even before this coronavirus thing, were any of your clients saying, what the hell is going on here? I mean, were you talking about your diet with clients and stuff like that?
Yeah, you know, I've been teaching for almost a decade now. Before the coronavirus started, I was teaching probably between 5 and 8 classes a week in person and some virtual ones, and not virtual, some corporate ones were more private. Now I'm teaching 2 virtual classes per week on Zoom, which is really cool that I've been able to keep that up through all of this, because I love teaching yoga. You know, and a little tangent, that's one of the reasons why I kind of started this account, because I wanted people to stop being afraid of eating meat and thinking that you're going to be more spiritual if you don't, and just kind of like get rid of that dogma by speaking out about it. But, you know, I honestly haven't had a ton of you know, and I'm in the South, people are a little more passive aggressive. they won't really say things to your face. They'll say stuff behind your back. So as far as what's gone on behind the scenes behind my back, I don't really know. But you know, the cool thing is I have my YouTube channel, and I have a meditation teacher here in town who's a vegan. But her and I have remained really close, and I actually helped her start a YouTube channel because she wanted to talk about some topics on, she's a medical doctor and a meditation teacher. So she wanted to start interviewing other doctors. So I showed her my YouTube channel, told her what it was all about. And she was like, oh, wow. But she was really open-minded about it, you know? And, one of my other teachers was a vegan for 15 years, and he came on my YouTube channel. So like, honestly, everyone that I know has been really cool. Now, being attacked from people that don't know me, oh yeah. I mean, I had to actually, I'm sure you know this, and I don't think you even do it, but on Instagram and on YouTube, you can block off certain words so that if people comment and say them, their comment just doesn't show up. It gets automatically blocked. I blocked the word namaste over a year ago because no one ever said namaste to me in a nice way when I started this account. It was always like, oh, and you call yourself a yogi and blah, blah, blah. And they would always end this horrible, mean statement with the word namaste. And I was like, okay, well, that goes on the blocked list because you know, you start to get the horrible, nasty comments, and they all kind of say the same thing, have similar words. And unfortunately, that was a word that just came up, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to block namaste because unfortunately I have gotten a lot of hate from vegans and you know, yogis, spiritual people. And it's like, if you're really that spiritual, then why do you feel the need to attack someone else? You know, go do your thing, go like be spiritual off in your place. You don't need to point your finger at somebody else and say that they're not spiritual or they're a bad person. You're deducting, you know, points from yourself. You're making yourself look like a jerk. So in person and students, everyone's been super cool. On the internet, no, not so much.
Yeah, it really is two different worlds. I've never, ever once in my life had anybody come up to me and say something negative like they would say online, you know, which
Oh yeah.
I get a lot of that. And, you know, maybe the fact that I'm 6'5" and 230, 240, depending on how much I've been eating lately, kind of mitigates that. But I mean, yeah, it really is, unfortunately, for all the positives that social media and this interconnectivity, and just like what things we're doing right now. I mean, we have this wonderful platform, and we're getting the message out there, and a lot of positive things are happening. People are sharing their stories, and I think we're moving the science, whether we believe it or not. You know, this stuff does contribute to scientific thought. Now you have to verify that stuff with scientific studies, and those things are coming. And in fact, after this meeting here, I've got a meeting with some researchers about some stuff that helps move the science. But you know, but there is so much negativity there, and these people that want to come on and attack you. And it's kind of like, you know, for some reason they feel like they have to leave comments, and they're attracted to your page. You didn't invite them there. You don't go on their pages, and they just come over there and just start, you know, stirring up their stuff. And so I've said it repeatedly, I'm not opposed to any vegan eating a vegan diet. And I'll make the caveat that I think probably for children, we should probably discourage that. But for an adult, you can eat whatever the heck you want. But when you start attacking me for my dietary choices, or trying to limit what I have available to eat through policy or pressure or guilt tactics, and particularly when you use propaganda, which is based on either flawed science, outdated science, or you know, partial bending of the truth, partial science, we're going to call that stuff out. Let's talk a little bit more about, because you said you tweaked it. Now, my understanding, I think, based on some of the feedback I think you've given, is you kind of fall into the camp of the higher fat approach to a carnivore diet, release you do recently. As you may be aware, I've been experimenting with that recently as well. So let's talk about the tweaks you've discovered, and what has benefited you personally. And I always put the caveat here that what works for me may or may not work for the general population. And so I'm very hesitant to make general proclamations like saying that everybody must do this to be successful, because there's so many counterexamples of people being successful with other techniques. And even, you know, believe it or not, shocking it is, there's people that get healthy without having to eat a carnivore diet. They can eat
Yeah.
an omnivorous diet. And I think that's great too. But let's talk about you personally. What works for you? What didn't work for you, and how have you fixed things?
Yeah, you know, and Sean, that's one thing I want to commend you on, is creating MeatRx and creating this platform for people where they can come and get individual help, because I think that, you know, there's no one size fits all for carnivore, and what works for me may not work for someone else, and vice versa. So I appreciate what you've done here, and continue to do and build this platform. You know, for me, I did a year of pretty straight up, like 2 pounds of meat per day and 2 meals a day. You know, the one thing I always like to tell people is I was doing a lot of fasting. So what started happening to me after about a year, and I think it definitely was the fact that I was doing too much fasting. I have a non-speaking autistic daughter. She's 12. And that's a chronic stressor, you know, so it's a lot, and I love her to death. She's the light of my life. She's made me who I am today. But to be constantly caregiving for a non-speaking autistic child is going to wear and tear on your adrenals. So I think I definitely did too much fasting, and that played into what started happening to my body. My cycle never regulated that whole first year I was on carnivore. Just never, it didn't come on time. You know, the cysts were gone, which is amazing. It's awesome. So that's why I kept going, but that cycle just wouldn't come on time. I wore a continuous glucose monitor with NutriSense, and I started noticing that my blood sugar was shooting 30, 40 points up starting at about midnight. And then, you know, it would stay up until I woke up, and then, you know, it would go back down, and I would get mixed opinions on, you know, why that was happening. I was asking different people. And then on my YouTube channel, I actually interviewed Stephanie Keto Person, who I know a lot of people are like polarized by her and disagree with. She's got a lot of strong opinions, but after that interview, her and I became really close personal friends. We probably talk every day now. Like she's become a good friend of mine. And so she actually was like, look, here's what's going on. And my GFR was low. So I had gotten some blood work done. My GFR was a 60, which for, you know, I was 40 at the time, not really optimal. So she helped me to switch. She's like, you know, let's see if we can drop your protein, up your fat, see if we can start getting your hormones to behave, because you're not getting your cycle on time. You're too young. You're too young to start going into menopause. That's what your body is saying is happening. So I said, fine, you know what, let me try this, because I am having such great results on carnivore with my joint health and it was the mental health really that kept me going. I just didn't want to go back on medication. I still don't. And thank God I haven't had to, but Stephanie helped me formulate my diet, to do, you know, it's closer probably to 90% fat that I do now and 10% protein. And within 2 weeks, my cycle came. This is the 6th month that it will be on time. Since that, it has come every 28 days since I switched to the high fat approach. My sleep got better. I've been testing my GFR every 6 weeks, which I know is silly. Like I know it's not necessary, but it's kind of like you get a score like that. I always tell people your liver can regenerate, but your kidneys cannot. So you kind of want to just make sure that that's okay. But my GFR has been a 90 and above every time I've tested it. And I just feel really good. And just having those hormones regulated, it makes such a difference in how I respond to the world. So, you know, that's the great results I've seen. I've been able to keep all the other benefits and switching to that high fat approach and zero fasting. I mean, I'm eating within 30 minutes of waking every day. I don't go longer than 12 hours without eating most of the time, unless it's something happens and I just get busy. But I just find that my body is not kind of stuck in the fight flight zone, as long as I'm giving myself adequate nutrition and not doing that fasting. Hormones are better than ever, better than they were when I was probably 36, 35 years old. You know, I'm 41 now. And this is one thing I'll stop the ladies chat, because I know we have a lot of men in here too. But, you know, right around, I would say 34, 35, my cycle went from 5 days to 7 days, and it started just becoming really hard to deal with. And it was always 7 days. Now, when I first got my cycle back in, I think it was like January, February, it was still 7 days. But now the last 3 months, it's been 5 days again. And I thought, oh, wow. So I guess it's just my hormones have kind of gone back to where they were, you know, when I was in my mid 30s, which is super awesome. So.
Yeah, let me, you know, I'll make a little funny little anecdote here. So I am, my girlfriend and I, and I'm 53 and she's 54, we are in the process of adopting a little baby, you know, and this will be my 5th child. But as part of that, there's a medical workup, and, you know, I guess they have a generic form, and I had to get mine filled out saying I'm healthy, that I can adopt. But one of the question is, for the doctor to answer is, do you feel this person can get pregnant if treatment were rendered? You know, and it's a question to ask me, and obviously you have to put no, I can't get pregnant regardless of whatever treatment you do. But so I guess that kind of that can see. But the one caveat I would say about GFR is we know that on a higher protein diet is creatinine independent, and so that formula is based on how much protein floating around. So it will maybe artificially lower the GFR. So what would be nice to see, you know, and I'm not telling you have to do this, but as you saw the GFR progressively go from 60 to 90, if you had a cystatin C the whole time, I suspect the cystatin C would have been the same. So what you're probably seeing is this less protein in the bloodstream, and therefore you're seeing a relative increase in GFR. It may or may not indicate that the kidneys have gotten any better or worse. You know, I mean, that's just something put out there. But I will say, the higher fat approach, and I'm asking people in the community, particularly our diabetics, to really give that a go and see what it does, because I do think that there's a lot of validity there. I think that you know, you're not providing as much gluconeogenic potential when you're taking the protein. You know, obviously the carbs are going, but then the protein is your second source for that. And, you know, depending on which literature you read, it's anywhere between 35 to 55 grams of glucose can be generated from 100 grams of protein. In theory, there's some radioisotopic data that shows it may not be that much, but that may be different in a diabetic versus a non-diabetic. And so you didn't mention, or maybe I didn't hear it, but did you have any history of, I know you talked about cysts on your ovaries, which would indicate, you know, PCOS and probably hyperinsulinemia. So you may have had some of that pathophysiology going on in the background, and that's where that higher fat approach makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I have had anemia forever. I don't have anemia now. I haven't had it since I went carnivore, thank goodness. But I've been anemic since I was a little kid. You know, I have the MTHFR mutation. And so, you know, I think when we look at a carnivore diet, one thing I tell people is look at your health history going into it, genetic mutations you have. You may have a little bit more difficulty methylating. You may want to look at that higher fat approach. And then the chronic stress, you know, I don't think we give enough credence to people and the stress that they have in their lives, you know, of what's going on. And now that we're kind of in this pandemic situation, I see people's stress levels going up, people gaining weight, people having, you know, just a really difficult time with their health. And we're not giving that whole thing of stress and what it's probably, for me, when I was wearing it, I put on a continuous glucose monitor. I had it on the first week of the pandemic. It wasn't planned that way. But my blood sugars were, and this was eating super high fat, you know, which is really supposed to be the gold standard for keeping your blood sugars low. You know, I'd wake up and it was like in the high 70s, low 80s, but I'd start getting up and trying to manage, you know, home with a child that's just had her whole life taken from her. No more school, no more therapy, no more nothing. You're home. My blood sugars were going up to like 120, 130. Just because it was the stress. And it's like, it doesn't matter what I eat or don't eat. This is just what my body is just doing right now. Thankfully, it's all kind of settled back down to where it should be. But yeah, when you're formulating the way that you eat, I think you have to look at stress also as another factor.
Yeah, we've got a number of questions in the chat, and one of the main questions is 90% carnivore. What are you eating? How do you get so much fat? What are your fat sources?
I love, now I'm weird because some people think it's disgusting, but I just love raw beef suet. I mean, to me, it's tasty. You got to find a source though. You got to find a source that you like of raw beef suet. I also do a ton of egg yolks. I love egg yolks. I do fat trimmings. I love pork fat. That's one of my ultimate favorites. And I just eat the pork fat raw right out of the freezer. I mean, it's delicious to me. It's like, it's my ice cream. Yeah, I just eat a lot of fat, and, you know, I do try to eat organ meats. So before I jumped on this call, I had like probably 3 ounces of liverwurst and an ounce and a half of raw beef suet. And that's a meal for me. It's simple. It's easy. I don't have to stress about it. You know, not a lot of prep.
Yeah, I tried the raw, you know, and maybe not raw fats, but the raw, and I just didn't personally find it very palatable. But I mean, I know a lot
Yeah.
of people seem to do that. And then the only caveat and caution I say is, you know, sourcing is important, because there you
Oh
can
yeah.
get a contaminated issue,
Oh
and
yeah.
that can certainly cause a lot of problems. We've got Amber O'Hearn, who I'm sure you're familiar with, coming on in a little while, and she makes the arguments that humans are, in fact, maybe not carnivores, but actually lipivores. You know, we
Mhm.
are actually fat seeking. If we think about that, I mean, I think there's a lot of plausibility for that, because, you know, when we look at, you know, let's say, because one of the arguments is, well, how come lions don't have a big brain like humans? I mean, they're carnivores. How come wolves don't have big brains like humans? Well, I mean, to be truthful, on a per size basis, carnivores have larger brains than herbivores in general. That's a general rule we see across the board, because it takes more intelligence to actually hunt than to chew grass. I mean, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. I mean, that's actually true. But to grow that big human brain, I mean, you know, we needed a really high calorie source of nutrition. And obviously, fat is important. You know, that's why we were seeking bone marrow. That's where we were eating the brains of animals. You know, we would eat, you know, certainly, like you point out. And the argument about the organ meat, I'm certainly not anti-organ meats, but I think there's some degree of fat-seeking behavior in that, because typically the viscera were, like you point out, the suet, which is the
Hmm.
perinephric fat, and then there's omental fat, and there's pericardiac fat. And so I think some of that behavior, particularly in wild animals, may be the fact that they're eating lean animals, and
Hmm.
that's where the fat is. I mean, they want the fat first, because the protein's easy. Protein's
Yeah.
not hard. If you're eating a carnivore diet,
Oh
protein
yeah.
extremely easy, particularly if you're hunting lean animals, which is what humans have been relegated to doing since all of our big fatty juicy mammoths and everything kind of went away. So our fat supply kind of dwindled away, you know, 25 to 100,000 years ago, depending upon where you were in the world. So I definitely think fat is very, very important. And I think it's also dependent on the person and their athletic goals and some of these other things. But I think if I were to say what would be a default setting for most people who are gaining their health, and I've always, you know, if you read my book and you talk to me, I'm like fatty ribeyes. And probably the main criticism I have with ribeyes right now is they're not fatty enough. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the issue. And, you know, back in the 1940s, when you look at pictures of butchers, I mean, they had a lot of fat on their meat. Now they go in there and they trim it off. And um, what you point out about the beef fat trimmings, and I've done that recently, and my goodness, it's delicious. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's like beef bacon. I mean, you know, you can get beef bacon, but it's similar. I mean,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
it's the same taste, it's the same flavor. You fry it up and throw some salt on it, and my gosh, that is just friggin' rich and delicious. Let me ask you about satiety, because this is the one
Hmm.
thing I think is important here, because to maintain weight, to lose weight on a higher fat approach, I think the fat has to be satiating to you.
Hmm.
And I think you have to not eat that many calories relative. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think you need to be starving yourself. I don't even think you need to be doing lots of fasting necessarily. But let's say, for instance, and that's why I talk about dairy fat. If, for instance, you're saying, I'm going to eat lots and lots of cheese and dairy fat, and maybe I'm going to throw some stevia in there, and now I'm going to really, really overeat that stuff. Whereas you go out and you know, I've done this. I mean, the other day I ate a pound and a half of beef trimmings and I fried it up, and I obviously lost a lot of the fat, but even eating that, I mean, I was like done.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's not that much food for me. I mean, I'm a guy that's used to eating 3, 4 pounds of meat without any problems. And
Oh
sometimes when
yeah.
I'm sitting, pound and a half of beef fat. And I was like, holy cow. And I didn't want to eat I didn't eat for like 30 hours. I was just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So do you find that your appetite is well satiated with that much fat?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it took a little bit. I feel like it was a transition because I was used to eating a large amount of meat at one time. And so you kind of get used to the portion, it's a little bit of a mind trick also. But, what I also did is divide it up into 3 meals a day. And at the beginning, I did a lot of weighing and measuring just kind of get an idea of what I needed, what was going to work for me. Now I like I just said, I weighed my meal before I ate it now. So sometimes I still do weigh and measure. But yeah, as long as I'm eating enough fat, I find that I'm not starving all the time. I kind of have to just, because I'm really minding my adrenals right now, I just don't skip meals, but I probably could if I wanted to. I probably really could. Just that kind of therapeutic level of ketosis that you get in when you're eating that much fat. I think you're just not as hungry.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. You mentioned, you went in and got at 4 months in, you got a second ultrasound, it showed, the ovarian cysts were gone. So any commentary from your physician on this? And did you tell him what you were doing? And was there any yay, nay, support, no support type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, when she saw that, she was like, how did this happen? Because I actually had fibroids removed by the same doctor a few years ago. Now my husband's in the lab business, and so he's kind of buddy with a lot of doctors around town. So when I go to the doctor, because he knows them and works with them, I kind of get special treatment. So she'll wheel the ultrasound machine in and just check out things. So what she did right away was like, okay, well, I told her what I was eating, and she's like, let's do a full blood panel. Was just kind of freaked out. Of course, my cholesterol came back high, if her standards. And she said, well, okay, everything else just looks so good. Let's just retest in 6 months, maybe go get a second opinion on your cholesterol. She was a little freaked out by the whole cholesterol thing, but she didn't have anything else to say because my CRP was, below a 1. It was like a 0.5, and everything else just looked really good. So she's like, okay, well, I'm not super worried about it then, no vitamin deficiencies, none of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What vitamins were you testing, just out of curiosity, when you say no vitamin deficiencies, or did you formally test those?
The D, vitamin B12. What else did we test? The omega-3, 6. Trying to think of what else we tested. We did we did all the B's just to check those, because I know some of those.
Did you do vitamin C? Because that would be obviously the one that most people would be concerned
Yes,
with.
we did. We did. That was one of the ones she was very concerned about, and it was absolutely fine. Yeah. I mean, nothing came back deficient at all.
Yeah, that's been my experience in general. There, and folate sometimes up and down.
The folate was good.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know because, well, I mean, if you're eating liver, you're probably getting more folate. But
Oh,
even
yeah.
for people that don't, most people don't realize this. But when you go on a ketogenic diet, the microbiome, the bacteria that produce folate, are dramatically upregulated, and so you have a lot of endogenous well, I wouldn't call it endogenous, but you have a lot of microbiota folate production, and so a lot of people don't see folate deficiencies. And so when I pointed to the scientific part of this, and when we're getting ready to do a clinical trial, one of the concerns, is, oh my God, you're not eating fruits and vegetables, you're going to be deficient in vitamin C and folate and this and that. So we'll want to test those things in a controlled fashion. And so that's what, not only proving the efficacy of the diet, it can say carnivore diet treats diabetes really, really well. We can show, you can do that. You can prove that with blood tests. And then the other thing is, well, what about all the deficiencies you're going to get? And you can test that as well.
Oh yeah.
To the degree that serum tests actually show you this true picture, because there's some controversy about that. Let me ask you about dairy. I didn't hear you mention, I didn't hear a lot of dairy in that. Are you cooking with it, ghee, butter, or any of those types of things?
I do butter, but that's about it. I don't do dairy. I still, if I have a little bit of cream, or if I try to eat a little bit of yogurt or something like that, I'll start having issues, like a little patch of eczema will pop up on my wrist pretty quickly, or I'll start getting dry skin somewhere. I try to do, because everyone says raw dairy, do raw dairy. So earlier this year, now in Georgia, if you want raw dairy, it has to be labeled for pets. so I found some dog cream, you know, and decided to do a little raw dairy experiment to see how I did with it. And I tell you, after the second night, I had severe pain in my ankle. I have an old injury in my ankle where I broke it in several places and had major surgery. This was 20 years ago. And it was like someone had re-broken my ankle. It was bizarre. And then I have a friend who's a naturopath, and he was like, oh yeah, that's the dairy. That's how your body is showing that inflammation. The inflammation response is that's the dairy. So I took it out. My ankle was fine. I mean, I had to wrap it up for a couple of days. It was hard to walk on. And so I was like, well, it's delicious, but I guess I just don't need it, you know?
Yeah, in California, you can get raw dairy. In fact, I just, not too long ago, I tried some. I found some raw cream, and I used it. And
Okay.
honestly, I didn't see any miraculous because some people, oh, it's miraculous and does that, and I honestly didn't find it to be all that beneficial to me. But again, your mileage may vary on that stuff. Um, are you, are you? And again, I'm totally supportive of this. If people do this, they find that's helpful. But have you added some plants back into your diet? Are you still 100% carnivorous, or what's the diet look like with regard to that stuff?
I go back and forth a little bit. I try plants and then I'm like, I don't need this. I don't feel as good. My husband's birthday was back in March before everything shut down. We went out to a really beautiful steak restaurant, and they brought this broccoli to the table, and it was like smothered in butter, and it looked good to me. And I was like, let me just try some of this. And he was cracking up because he's like, oh my God, my wife's eating vegetables for the first time in like a year and a half. And he's like, someone's going to find you because he knows I have my YouTube and my Instagram. He's like, someone's going to find you. You're going to get in trouble. There's hidden cameras. But I tried the broccoli, and I didn't have any issue with it. I mean, it didn't bother me at all. I have avocado every now and then, but I'm kind of just like, I like to keep things so simple. I've tried asparagus. So when I try something, I will try it. So it's the only thing I add in that day. So the day I tried asparagus, I was like, let me just try a little asparagus, and then wait 3 days, just to see. And I've had no side effects from any of those vegetables at all. But I still just kind of prefer the simplicity of carnivore, and if I crave something, I'll be like, all right, I'll try it. But I feel like I've had so much gut healing that it hasn't been a major disaster, except with the dairy. But as far as plants go, I haven't, and of course I stay away from like anything with oxalates and a lot of anti-nutrients. But I haven't had any major issues with it, but I do pretty much plan on just staying on carnivore.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach, and it's good to see that some people can recover gut function to where they can handle, some of these things perhaps in small quantities. Personally, vegetables don't have much appeal to me. I would much prefer, quite honestly, a bowl of ice cream or a piece of cake, or maybe some fruit. If I were to do that. But I mean, and I agree. I mean, many of us are like, we just prefer the simplicity. We prefer the nutrition. We prefer the way we feel, and it's nice to. I would never you see like these people that are ideologically, labeled a certain way, where it's like, I'm a vegan, and if I eat one
Yeah.
egg, then I'm not a vegan. And if you eat one egg, you're a murderer, and that type of stuff. And I think that the fact that we can say, hey, look, do carnivore, do it for your health. If you mix it up a little bit, who cares? And I think that's an important thing to
Yeah.
do, because, you want to sit there and be anxious about the fact that, somebody brought you a steak out and they had some herb garnish on there, and somebody's going to see you and think, oh my gosh, you're not a carnivore. And it's not like it's not a religion anyway. So
Not at all. I just want to spread the message that you can recover your health meat-based, and not everyone needs to go carnivore, but I personally just feel much better on it. So I just stay, and it's easy.
yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think that is the message that I've been trying to get out there. And even though it seems like it's more polarizing than it is, but well,
Yeah.
um, What, oh, yeah, no, like I said, you mentioned your, I think your daughter, you said 12-year-old nonverbal autistic daughter. Yeah, I've got a 14-year-old verbal autistic son, and I can tell you, well, as we know, just kids in general are stressful, but
Mm-hmm.
that definitely adds a level of stress to things. And I see, for me, unfortunately, I see my kids, I'm divorced, so I see them on a part-time basis. And so generally they spend the summers with me, but because of coronavirus, and they're in a different state, I have not been able to see them all summer, which is really, really frustrating for me
That's
because
hard.
I can't see my kids. It'll be, 6 months since I can see my children. It's going to be almost a year between seeing my own children, which that's one of the reasons I'm so kind of annoyed by this shutdown stuff, among
Yeah.
other things. But um, let me ask, somebody's asking about egg whites. Do you find, because that's the thing, a lot of people have egg intolerances, but
Mhm.
the question I sometimes say is maybe it's more the white than the yolk. Do you notice any difference in that?
I actually just feel better just eating the yolks, and since I am trying to keep my protein a little bit on the lower side to keep the fat up, I just don't use them. I just throw them out. And my daughter, she's keto. She started being keto in March. Like when we shut everything down, her behavior got so crazy that I said, you know what, I'm putting her on keto. That's it. She's doing it. So I've kind of experimented a little bit with her. She also has a problem with the egg whites, but can more so handle the yolks. So I know people get triggered whenever I post a video where I'm just having egg yolks, but we throw them out. I mean, and my husband doesn't care for just whites. I mean, he'll eat the whole egg, but he's definitely not trying to, just eat whites. He's not a bodybuilder or anything like that. So yeah, I just feel better without the whites.
Yeah, just because I've done a lot of the sort of straight up egg yolk omelets, and you obviously,
Oh,
well,
good.
I'm still going to get a little bit of white in there unless you have some
Yeah.
perfect separating machine. But I just kind of, do the one egg to the other shell and back and
Mm-hmm.
forth, do that. But I find that, and then with boiled eggs, I've had some boiled eggs the same, but I give the whites to my turtle and my fish. I just
Oh.
throw it in their little pond and they eat it. And they've gotten, it's kind of interesting because the fish, the turtle has always been fairly carnivorous, and I'll throw a hunk of meat in there, like leftover meat or something like that. And he'll eat it up. But recently, we made the mistake of making it ripping up into small pieces, and then the fish went crazy for it. And these are koi,
Wow.
so normally they cruise around sucking down algae all day, but they went crazy for meat. So now the turtle has to compete, and so I think he got pissed off and climbed out of the enclosure, figured out how to get out of there because he's like, these damn koi keep eating my food. So it's kind of funny. So I have to put a big hunk in there so she can eat it rather, myrtle the turtle, and then the fish get little shredded meat. So everybody's turning into
Interesting.
carnivores in my house. But it's kind of interesting. I was going to ask you. So you said you're playing with a ketogenic diet with your daughter. Any improvements in behavior there or function with that you've noticed?
Oh yeah. I mean, right away. Now she has her own YouTube channel. That was what she wanted for Christmas. We do a kind of communication called letterboarding. So she doesn't speak, but she can actually spell. I just discovered this probably about 3 years ago. She's like genius level, but I had no idea until we discovered this letterboarding therapy where she goes letter by letter to spell. It's hard because I have to have a therapist to do it. There's a lot of nuance to it, but on her channel, you can see her going letter by letter to spell her thoughts. And so we just had a therapist that started coming back. She's only seeing Alexis, my daughter. She's not seeing any other kids. And so she's thankfully back. And so we did a 90-day keto update on my channel and on Alexis's channel. But the things that she said, when she explains things, it's just so eloquent. I'm like, are you sure you're only 12? But what she said was that her body can hold a lot more emotion, which speaks to that emotional regulation piece, which I witnessed right away. That was the big thing that made me want to take her keto. And she's largely meat-based. I mean, we don't do keto treats. We don't do any of that junk. She's very meat-based. with a lot of fat. She steals my beef suet. Like, the girl loves the beef. She loves the beef suet. She steals it. I'm like, girl, slow down. But she spoke right away to the emotional regulation piece, that she felt a lot better, and I saw her behaviors improve, her sleep improved. The biggest thing is that she had these chronic ear infections, and I feel like a lot of kids on the spectrum suffer with a lot of gut problems, a lot of chronic infections. And so she, since a very young age, would get an ear infection starting in April, May, and it would last all the way through November, December. I mean, it was horrific. Last year we went to an infectious disease doctor twice. We had 2 exploratory surgeries. It was an absolute nightmare. So we started keto in March, and here we are, middle of July, and she, knock on wood, metal, anything, she has not had one ear infection, not one complaint of any type of ear pain at all. So that has been a miraculous thing for the family, because when she's in pain, it's just horrible for everybody, so yeah.
Yeah, that's totally awesome that, she has a channel. And, my son's the same way, as far as, I mean, he's just friggin' amazing, the stuff he knows. I mean, it's just like, you can literally ask him any question about any country in the world, and he can tell you the statistics down to the GDP of a country, the currency, the violence
and
rate.
we never taught them anything, and they just kind of, we had an evaluation done for her for math before the whole virus thing, with this woman who teaches calculus and teaches this, really advanced kids. And because we were like, let's test her out. We've never taught her math. She's been in special school forever. She tested for trigonometry and calculus level 1. She knew the quadratic formula. I'm like, where did you even pick this stuff? Yeah, it's like, it's amazing how she's like, I just always knew it. Math isn't that hard, Mom. I'm like, okay, whatever you say. I could never do it.
Yeah, that's really, really, really amazing. And kudos for you for getting on a YouTube channel, because I'm sure she's going to impact other people with similar. There's in case you're not aware, there's an autistic carnivore group on Facebook.
Yes.
Thomas Clark. Yeah. So I think that's another great thing. And this is another just tremendous benefit. And we're seeing all these things that are being benefited by changing diet, which is so important, What do you have coming up? We're almost, unfortunately, this has just flown by, but we're almost to the hour point. And then like I said, I've got to jump on a meeting with David Ludwig here in a minute. But tell me what you got coming up, and where can people find you, Sarah? What kind of you mentioned YouTube, not YouTube and Instagram. So where are your locations?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram a lot. I hang out there, and it's at carnivore.yogi. And then if you go on YouTube and just type in Carnivore Yogi, my channel will pop right up. I was talking with a friend this morning, thinking about possibly starting a podcast sometime in the next few weeks here, because I really enjoy interviewing just regular everyday people about their experience on carnivore and meat-based healing. And yeah, Stephanie and I have been throwing around the idea of doing an online carnivore challenge sometime in August, September. So we've been talking about that. So probably more on that soon, but I'll announce it all on my YouTube and Instagram whenever we decide to do that.
Great for you. And like I said, the more people are out there getting the message out there, it's going to reach a critical threshold at some point, and then there's no holding us back. And I think that's great with everybody. I know you talked about this platform, and certainly we're proud of what we're doing, where we're going, but it takes community, and it takes a lot of people that are passionate about it. And that's what we have, which is so exciting. And glad to see that you're doing that as well. And so continued success with the yoga stuff. Maybe one day I'll go back and play with that. But it's been great. So, well, thank you again, and hopefully stay safe there in Georgia, and good luck with everything coming up, and don't hesitate to come back and visit us anytime you want. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here, and love everything you're doing. And if there's anything I can ever do to support you or MeatRx, just let me know. I'm all for it.
Yeah, just, like I said, let people know we're around, and we'll continue to continue to do good things. All right. Okay,
Awesome.
everybody, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys back, some of you guys back tomorrow. Have a great weekend otherwise. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.